I guess we're really interested to know who in the who out there has done the school in the past and when did you do it? And those like me have been around a while. We've seen the school change its name a little bit. So you might have gone to the School of Change Agents last year, or you might have gone to the School of Healthcare Radicals or the School of Health and Care Radicals in the past. So if you just give us a sense of whether, if you've done the school and at what stage you might have done the school, whether in fact you might be a bit of a groupie like me and done it several years in a row. So perhaps answer that question. And then what was your favourite part of school? And perhaps more importantly, what was the most useful thing that you took away from school and applied to your everyday practice back in the workplace? So I'm going to let everyone put some comments in the chat room, and then we'll sort of just try and summarise all that. And Lee's got the job of just keeping an eye on the chat room as things progress. And if someone wants to make some comments, that's fine as well.
Thank you, Peter. You're doing fabulously. I've just turned on my video so you can all get the effect of my humidity here. And it's lovely you're sharing everything in the chat room. If anyone wants to speak and share their views as well, that's absolutely fine. Just unmute yourself and announce yourself. That's absolutely fine. Very welcome.
Some great comments coming in. If anyone feels like they'd like to make a statement or say something, that's also fine. We've got plenty of comments in the chat room, but I know it's a bit intimidating doing this, just speaking one of these Zoom conversations. But feel free to if you're so inclined.
Can everybody hear me? It's Jenny.
Yes, fire away, Jenny.
I'm actually a midwife. I retired at the end of June and I'm just starting up different things. I'm having a little bit of a rest from my NHS job, which had for nearly 40 years. But I think what the School of Change Agents or the School for Healthcare Radicals did for me was it helped me to understand my own behaviour as a radical, which I'd never understood before, why I was doing certain things at work, why I was challenging practice and why I was speaking out. And I'd never identified that until I heard about the School for Change Agents. So it's helped me a lot and it's helped me to help others. So thank you.
I think your story is a common one. I've heard those comments a lot, and if I was to be honest, that's some of the reflections I've personally had as well.
Hello, my name's Lisa, and what I would like to say is sometimes it feels like you're very alone, or like I'm very alone in trying to make a difference and trying to make things better. So actually knowing that there's people out there that are fighting the same fights is very reassuring.
Yeah, great point. Again, that's a thing that I've commonly heard people talk about as well. Anything coming through the chat room that's worth highlighting, Lee?
Hello, sorry. Sorry, I was talking to myself there. I forgot I was still on mute. So yes, there's been lots of really good feedback in the chat room. So Amanda was saying that she took part in school recently. She loved the presentation. She took away confidence and drive to put those ideas into action. Jill, well done. Yeah, you finally completed this year after 2 previous starts that you didn't complete, so congratulations. Ashish is saying that enjoyed the resistance and resilience. Lisa enjoyed the connections, like the last person just spoke. And Jennifer saying about creative ways to engage others and drive new ideas. And that's really a common theme about getting courage, getting inspiration, finding like-minded people. I remember from doing some of the chats during school this year, it was lovely that people found other people who felt like them and thought like them and felt they weren't alone, which is really, really beautiful. It's a real privilege to be part of that. So thank you. And if anyone else would like to speak up together, please do.
Okay, we might move on to the next slide, Ollie. So why are we here today? So everyone in the room's got a job to do for the next hour and a half. We really want to pick people's brains. We're here because one of the, I guess, most important white papers in the NHS's history is now 4 years old, and it's time for it to be rewritten. The new era of thinking, practice and change and transformation was written by Helen Bevan and Steve Farman back in 2014, and it was the most downloaded white paper in NHS history. And I remember in 2014 when it came out and the real buzz that it created, and it was really ahead of its time. But of course the world moves on, and the sort of messages that came out of that paper have really resonated, and it's time to sort of reflect on and get ahead of the game again, as it were, and to really think about what the future looks like and how we can actually inform that thinking, knowing what we know about the world as it continues to move on. So our challenge is to rewrite the paper and again get ahead of the game, and also to help inform really good clinical practice around transformational change again over the next 4 or 5 years. So might move on to the next slide. Can you move to the next slide? So what I've got here is just my own personal reflections in 2014. Like I said, I'm an Australian. I work in Australia, and this is a paper that really went viral. And I remember back in 2014 speaking to my colleagues where I work around the paper. So I'm a clinician back in Australia, and a lot of my work is in the sort of change management and transformational change space. And I remember a couple of things, and now actually looking at the paper again and trying to analyse it in more detail, these things continue to be true for me. That firstly, it was a great piece of writing. It's free of jargon, and it was positive and affirming, and it really was a call to action. More importantly, it actually caps some really important concepts in really clear and memorable terms. So there's a series of enablers, which I think we can all relate to, and there was an action plan that was developed or discussed over 15 points, which were very useful for change agents back in their workspace to sort of use and apply practically. And because of the number of downloads, I clearly wasn't the only one who fell in love with it and used it in my day-to-day clinical and change management and management practice. Can we go to the next slide? So what we've listed here is really the 5 enablers that were articulated in the paper. So the 5 enablers really, I guess, resonate with what we already we learnt with school, and there's so many synergies between what happens in school and with the paper. So the first enabler was around activating disruptors, heretics, radicals, mavericks or rebels. The second one was the importance of leading transformation from the edge. The third enabler was about changing your story and perhaps importantly, focusing on the importance of different types of telling the story rather than the traditional medical data ways of telling stories. The fourth enabler was the importance of actually curating knowledge, including using tacit knowledge rather than more traditional forms of knowledge. And the fifth one was about building bridges to connect the disconnected. So those 5 enablers, I'm sure you will all recall, and will recall them as being important and critical themes that came out of school and have been themed with school really over a number of years. Next slide. So this is where we actually need you to help us. We want to get your thoughts on the enablers, and what we want to do is to break up into a couple of rooms so that we can have some sort of focused discussion in smaller groups. So what we'd like you to do is to go into those groups and think about a couple of things. What were the most important enablers from your perspective? Which are the ones that most resonate with you? When you look at those enablers, do you think there's anything missing in the set of enablers? And if you had the opportunity, as you do, as partners in this co-design, co-production process, how would you amend them or how would you alter them to be more meaningful for you and the work that you do? So I'm going to call on Rosie, Lee and Ollie to help me work out how we split everyone up into smaller groups to have some local discussion using those questions as prompts. We're going to have about an 8-minute discussion, and then we're going to come back together and have some feedback from those groups about where the discussion went.
Yeah, so I'm just going to send everyone into breakout rooms now. And you should get a message on your screen saying the host is inviting you to join a breakout room, and just click join. If you have any issues, just post in the chat.
Okay, so to those who aren't getting the options to move, that's fine. We'll have a chat here in the main room. So what do you think? Unmute yourselves while we're in this room, and we can have a discussion, or you can use the chat. It's up to you. That's great.
Hi everybody, thanks Rosie. Hello, everybody's in the room. Is it possible to get the slide back up, Rosie, so we know what we're doing? Hello everybody, so we're just looking at the enablers. Let me see if I can share my screen and get them up. With me just a sec. Can you see that, guys? Do you want to take yourselves off mute so we can chat? Do you know where mute is?
Hi, Lee, I can see you now as well. I can see the slide. So I think it's a slide before that one that's got the enablers on.
That's right.
In case people want a reminder.
Yeah. I can just see some people's faces and they look like they're trying to speak, but I couldn't hear them. So.
Oh, hello. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hiya. So thanks so much.
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, I'm not sure who that was speaking, but yes, I can hear people.
Can you hear me?
Who is me?
Wendy Johnson.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello, Wendy.
Lovely,
Hello.
thank you.
Hiya.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining us. So we're just talking about the enablers. I hope you can see my screen. We can just probably go back to the previous slide and see what those enablers were. Yeah, so it's really just a conversation about what are the most important enablers to you, what's missing, and would you amend or alter them? Over to you.
Shall I make a start? So I can really remember, yeah, hello everyone, my name's Kate, and I work in part of the Horizons team, but I remember I worked at Nottingham Hospitals when this paper came out, and I can still connect with that emotional feeling at the first time I ever read it. As like, it was the first paper that kind of like, I thought, wow, this is really about us, about that we can deliver change, and it was so exciting. And to me, one of the things that are most exciting for me was about kind of like that understanding about things such as leading from the edge and that using a story to create change. So I don't think personally for me there would be any kind of like major things I would change. I would think about how we connect it to young people of today. I think that's kind of like the new workforce of the future would be kind of like my big thing. I'd like to see how we connect and become the languages and the right language that connects with young people. I don't know if anybody else have any more thoughts on that.
Hi, it's Wendy here. For me, the enabler really strongly, reflecting what you've just said there, was using those personal stories to enable future stories, to value that personal and honest connection as a result of sharing personal stories. And that was a real enabler, because it valued not just the direction, but valued me and my part in that direction.
Yeah, completely agree with you on that. And it's kind of like it wasn't hierarchical. I think that was the thing that was really, really important for me, was that it doesn't matter what position you are in an organisation, you have a part to play in change. So it kind of, and I think like yeah, and I use the word hope. It gave me a hope.
Yeah.
Hope's a beautiful word, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt.
Thanks, Wendy. That's a really lovely reflection as well about you being valued and being part of that. That's really, really important.
I've just seen that some people have put some comments in the chat room as well about the importance of stories, and that it allows people to connect with their own environment and where they are. So yeah, really, really good. And the fact that stories encourage and create that movement for change as well. So I think that would be an important thing, is to get more stories. Sorry, was there somebody about to? I thought I could hear a voice then.
I was just going to offer something. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me? It's Jill.
Hello, Jill.
Hi. First, I'd just like to second the points that have already been made about connecting with younger audiences and looking ahead to the sort of skills and approaches and mindsets that people coming into the workforce today and have been needing for the next 2 years. I think it's really powerful to echo everything that's been said about storytelling. And the other thing is, I think actually buried in there was some stuff around building resilience, wasn't there? And on the flip side of that, there's now a lot of talk about the importance of joy at work and about being able to create positive environments. And I wonder whether we can maybe connect with some of the latest evidence on some of that stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Joy at work's a really important point, isn't it?
It's very hot at the moment.
Yes.
And if you thought of it in terms of an enabler, I think it's the personal enabler. It gives you the energy to be able to stand up and do the leading from the edge and disrupt a bit. So I do think it's an important part of the equation.
And that really resonates, I think, Joe, with what people were saying about feeling alone and things before. And that's really, really sad. So it's that finding, and it also relates to what Wendy was saying about feeling valued, and the contribution that everybody has to make, whatever it is that you do and however it is that you do it. So that's really, really super. Thank you.
I'm just wondering if there's any groups of staff or areas that we need to involve in the story and trying to understand their stories, of thinking about that real crossover now with social care, and how we bring that community in as well. So it's not just about health.
Yeah, absolutely, Kate. Because all of our colleagues within who cares, police perhaps as well, and teachers, and all of those sort of public services who help care for people.
And I suppose with that, actually, just rightly, you just making me think about that, moving to citizenship and us about the world, the community is changing, that actually patients are their experts. That change of that culture about who's the expert any longer. So maybe I don't think, I just remember off the top of my head, I don't think there are any stories about the patient experience is quite the same, or those case studies. And forgive me if I've got that wrong. It's been a while since I looked at the end bit.
Yeah, that's it's true, isn't it? Because personalisation movement at the moment, you know, nothing about me without me and things like that as well. It's important movement. And
so it's like all the stuff about them. Yes.
Sorry.
I was going to say about the makers movement as well. Yeah, valuing systems completely, Wendy.
And Isabel wrote a nice comment about the white paper being about, sorry, a breath of fresh air. Helps us understand we're not alone, not trapped in the mindset. And it's the right things to do to challenge status quo and things that don't make sense. Absolutely. I know we don't like to use the word empowerment because it's a bit cheesy, but yeah, it's really useful.
So is everyone back
So
in the main room? All right. So perhaps let's get some feedback about some of the discussion that happened in the smaller groups. We could probably get things going. Jenny, do you want to share your reflections on the enablers to kick things off?
Yeah, my discussion with Peter was about recognising that there will be challenges. You know, I think it's important to see, you know, it's okay saying push the boundaries, mobilise others, make change happen. But I think in that there must be some mention of what the challenges that bring. You know, good and bad challenges. Every challenge that you have obviously helps you to grow as a person and as an enabler. But it's not just a simple thing that you can become an enabler. You have to go through a process of, I think, determination, and also make it. We were talking also about the other thing that was missing was making it person-centred. So if you work in the NHS, the reason why you're an enabler or you're enabling others is that you can focus on your care of people that you're caring for. You know, make that your sole aim. So why are you doing something? And it should always be coming back to, for me, because I'm a midwife, is it should be about woman-centred care, and is that improving? That's just what we discussed.
Thank you,
me and Peter.
Anyone else want to share what they discussed in their small groups? Yeah, so person-centred came up in other groups. Thank you, Lee.
I can feedback from our group if no other takers. People were saying in our group that making a connection to younger people, because they're the future, you're going to be leading this in the future. So it's about getting the right language as an enabler to engage those younger people. Having very personal stories as an enabler, to know that people are valued for what they as individuals can do and collectively and be part of that direction. To not be hierarchical. Hope is a big thing. Kate was saying from reading the paper the first time, and to make sure that that goes through to this one as well. Talking about mindsets, and also you know, that's obviously a big one in terms of mindsets is hope. You know, whatever resistance or reactance you come up against, there's always hope. And joy at work, which I think is a really fab enabler as well. It's a real hot topic at the moment. And you know, when you are experiencing reactance and resilience, and perhaps you're feeling a bit alone, you know, no one should feel alone like that at work, and it brings some joy back to it. Also, we were talking about citizenship. You know, that's a big word at the moment as well. And also looking at the wider scope of this, because the NHS doesn't work in isolation, and so we work with you know, the police, you know, social care, teachers, all of those other people help care for communities as well. So we're part of the bigger picture. So that's a huge enabler as well. And the makers movement, and also looking at who's the expert in terms of person-centred care, as came up before. Thanks everyone. It was a really good chat.
And there's some really good stuff that came out of it. Anyone else want to contribute? I mean, I have to say that citizenship has come through as a real theme as I've been reading around this more and more. So it's great that came through. Love the idea of hope and joy being enablers as well. That's really good. Any other comments? Anywhere else around the trap?
Hi Peter, it's Zoe Lord here.
Hi Zoe.
Hi. So we had quite a few of those things as well. Probably just to add that we thought these enablers, although they make sense and they're the right things, they're actually quite hard to do. In some organisations, and cultures don't always allow these to be easy. So we talked about having examples of where these have worked and how to enable the enablers we spoke about as well.
You're getting ahead of the game, Zoe, because that's going to be really important later on in the discussion as well. I think you're absolutely right. Any other comments? Anything that we haven't touched upon? All right then. Well, that's been really helpful, and has reinforced, I think, some really important themes that are going to be important to take us forward. Ollie, can we go to the next slide? So this is an extraordinarily busy slide, and I do not for a moment expect you to read it. I'm actually going to summarise it in the next slide. So what this is really just a screenshot. So the most of the New Era paper people recall talks about the enablers and articulate some of the sort of evidence behind each of those enablers, and the middle section of the paper really then goes on to sort of talk about what change agents can do. And there was a series of 15 actions that that change agents should try and enact in terms of facilitating transformational change in their area, and that's them as listed there. So we might just go to the next slide, where I've sort of tried to get them down to just a couple of words. So these are the 15. So change starts with me, a key theme, as we know, that's come out of school, framing, finding shared purpose, finding and celebrating leaders everywhere, finding the disruptors, fostering diversity, looking to emergent approaches for transformation, getting to the edge, ensuring buy-in, fostering weak ties, learning how to curate knowledge and then disseminate and share that knowledge, the importance of building relationships, treating everyone as a volunteer, looking to create social leaders and using social platforms to connect, and the importance of re-energising in our day-to-day work to continue and continuing to be resilient. So those are sort of 15 actions. I guess one of the opportunities I think with the New Era papers is to try and distill them down, because whilst I can certainly remember 5 things, I can't remember 15. So is there a way to actually make these a little bit more meaningful for people by reducing the numbers to sort of a manageable, rememberable list? So we might just go to the next slide. So what we'd like people to do to go back into to rooms is to actually look at the 15 actions and think about, well, what are the must-haves, what are the should-haves, and what are the could-haves, and could you divide each of those in 5? So if there were 5 must-haves, what would they be? If there were 5 should-haves, what would they be? And if there were 5 could-haves, what would they be? So that's the first task. And then the second thing is, well, is there anything missing? Is there things that are not on the list that we actually should include in the list? So again, I'll throw to Rosie and Lee, and I think we'll go into some small group discussions just to sort of think about that a little bit further. So Lee or Rosie? So I'll leave people to go into their breakout rooms. 8-minute discussion, and we'll come back again and talk about where the discussions went.
Take her old ones off, and I wasn't sure that she stopped using them, so you know, categories at the bottom, if there's all categories, if you click that, it brings them up, and she does have all of the ones that we took from the ME in there, so text time is in there, and it is orange outline to the rest of the category, with that to second view. But it going in like this doesn't mean no. Oh no, that's
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I've been going through trying to unmute everyone as fast as I can. There we go. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So, are we all ready to move on to the question? Rosie, can you put the slide up or not?
Yeah, I can, but if someone has an issue, I may have to leave. So.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I tried to do it, but it wouldn't let me share my screen earlier. I can have another go. So, but have anybody got any particular thoughts from what we've just been talking about with Peter? Must, should, could, when they're looking about these into moving them into action.
Yeah, I'd like to see like some further work on the curate, especially when we talked about the patient-centeredness and finding ideas from the end user and things like empathy mapping and how to curate those rebel-rousing ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. And actually, I quite like. I don't think we've talked about using things such as empathy mapping at all. So I think that's it's a good way of phrasing it. I mean, I think it's quite a list, isn't it, of things there. That's quite a difficult to put into your mind or to frame and understand what it is. So I don't know if there's any other ways of using that as well. I quite like, so a few years ago we did a piece of work looking at the building blocks and the barriers for change, and it's a bit like the perceptions of nursing work that we've been doing. I quite like the way we frame it in those ways of the enable, the building blocks, and then kind of like put a translation under what does this mean. I think it can be quite easy to translate in that way.
I think we have seen a big shift. I think we have seen a big shift in social media and having some work on how we engage people through social media, how we let go of our egos so that they can engage in their own way is big. You know, we've seen a real transformation from being really prescriptive to kind of giving vision through the leadership and then allowing them to develop on their own.
I think, yes, absolutely.
Hi, it's Jill here. I was just ignoring what Peter's asked us to do, but looking at doing something differently. I'm just wondering if these kind of might fall into some groups, which would make it easier to, so you don't have to remember 15, you just have to remember the bit that you're in. So for example, there are some sort of where you start type stuff, like starts with me, find the edge.
Yeah.
Probably shared purpose.
Build relationship. Relationship.
Yeah. So then there's sort of then there is some stuff around relationships, which is because the screen's just died. So things like leaders everywhere, everyone a volunteer, weak ties. Do these groups? Because if we could group these into 3 or 4 sort of steps in a process. I don't want to be too directive about it, but if we could find a way to collect them together into nice little groups instead of having to remember 15 things, then that might solve the problem rather than trying to lose some of them.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yes, I get that. I'd say the other thing for me as well, but kind of I've been thinking a lot about it recently, is the what is new era failure, a new power failure? What is that now? Because I think this is quite, and it kind of goes back to what somebody just said a few minutes ago about the fact that you know, we help people and we leave them to get on with it, and there's also about catching people when they fall or helping them to learn. You know, it's that kind of like, you know, is there such a thing as failure? Is it not just the you know, failure is the opportunity to learn. If you don't learn, then that's actually the failure.
Yeah, no, you're right. I agree with that. Actually, that's quite a good one. It's actually quite a positive one as well, because
I think it's a really important one.
So I just think that probably is something that we should be a little bit more explicit about as well in it, because I think as a leader, that is a really strong message. Has anybody else got any more thoughts as well?
Would you put that as a leader or just social leader or just leader?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it needs to be its own block or something about new power, you know, the new era failure or something like that.
Yeah, because it stands sort of in its own entity, in its own space. I think that's a really good one, actually. I never really thought of that. That is a good one, because if you don't learn from what's gone wrong, how are you going to improve?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's something people really struggle with doing, especially
because they don't reflect
in the health service. But I think it's bigger than that. I think there's actually something around the culture that we're trying to do it in, is that actually it's not seen as acceptable to do that, and actually people are more interested in finding blame and somewhere to put the reason that the thing went wrong than they are in learning from it and moving it forward. And so there's a whole load of theoretical stuff that sits behind that which we can tap into. But I think a new model for how we might make that become a reality would be something that would be of real interest to people. A lot of people are struggling with, I know it's my job to be learning from failures, but nobody wants to do it, or I try and do it and it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. And not just that, if they're learning from the failures, how they're implementing any change. What are they doing to do that?
Oh, that's what
I think the breakout rooms have all come back together. So I think we're all back in the room together. So some great conversation. So it's probably, if we could perhaps get some feedback about the separate conversations. So who wants to go first? What was the sort of flavour of the conversation? Did you come to any conclusions about those three sets of lists?
Shall I feedback from the main room? And please, if anybody else wants to jump in, I would very much welcome it. So we talked about about maybe reframing the list of 15 into actual, like, grouping them and put them into groupings to try and, like, if we can try and create 4 groupings, so actually it could almost be like a storyboard in itself. But we then went on to what was missing, and we were talking about you know, what is new era failure or new power failure, and how does that work in the leadership for today? And sort of like, you know, the only failure is when you fail to learn from things not working. So we thought that was actually a really important one to add in.
Yes, I think there's a bit of feedback on the chat room. The groupings are a good idea, and it's certainly that would accord with where I've got to in my thinking. So that was a great idea. Anyone else want to chime in? Is there any other comments from the other groups? It might, the session I was in, I guess we'd already got to the point where we talked about grouping, because all the things that we thought in the must group were all about, well, sort of 2 sets really. One about change starting with me, and the second set was around the importance of relationships. So does anyone in the group that I was with want to make any comments about the discussion? No? No other comments? Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Go on, Marilyn. I think we need Marilyn on because Marilyn said some great points about being rebellious and how you have to sort of be more of a devious rebel.
Yeah.
Are you still there, Marilyn?
Yeah, I'm still there. I just am a bit shy because I really feel like I'm a guest here in this forum.
No, you're not a guest. You're not. We love you being here. Honestly, it's really nice.
Great.
It's good.
Well, I'm just gonna share what the summary of our discussion was. There was a little bit of a, I don't know if I call it a debate, but just a question throwing the ball back and forth about, you know, the use of the word heretic, rebel, radical. I, on one hand, saying perhaps important to be careful about using that kind of language in organizations, because that can produce antibodies, and that the resistance to the change is stronger because the dominant discourse will look for ways to kind of snuff out the movement. I prefer to work in a kind of a shadow organization on the edges and looking for ways to kind of move the change, and then take a stand when there's like a moral or integrity stand that's needed, and you need somebody with that courage to advocate for somebody. And I was challenged, and I thought it was a really nice challenge from, there was another lady, Wendy, was her name Wendy? Who said, yes, but we need to have that piece around the spectrum, that this notion of having that word heretic, rebel out there helps the folks on the other end of the spectrum have courage to stand up. And I thought that was also a really good point. I hadn't thought of that before. So it's certainly about context and continuum.
Thank you, Marilyn. And there's no guest. We're all equal voices in the discussions, and we really appreciated having someone like you who sort of comes from left field to give some different perspectives. So thank you for that. Is there any final comments from anyone before we move things on? Some great and helpful stuff that people have alluded to.
Isabel and Amanda had some really good points from group 2.
Yeah, are you happy to speak to those, somebody?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, fire away.
Hi, this is Isabel. Yeah, so I was talking in the group chat earlier. So I think one of the things that we struggle is there are actually very few people know about the School for Change and the white paper and all the quality improvement science behind this last and a large scale change, etc., etc. So it's very difficult to engage people when they don't actually have that background knowledge. And when we're talking about top-down versus bottom-up approach, if people don't have the knowledge to make a start, it's very difficult to do anything from a bottom-up approach. That's how I feel, because a lot of the junior staff, I think, possibly, many of us, also experience is like, we don't necessarily feel we have the permissions to do anything, or if we suggest anything, then, often you get asked, oh, can you write a proposal? Can you write a project? But for some junior staff, even they have great idea, they don't necessarily have the skill and the knowledge. For example, even to write a proposal, what they need to do, because, they might have finished their, university training, but the education doesn't necessarily prepare them to, to do this type of work, because they're trained to do clinical work. And this, a lot of them, they feel this is more like almost like an admin side of things that, they're not familiar with.
So yeah, rồi đấy. I'm coming through theoretically. You want to find that?
Very, very helpful comments there. Thank you for that. It looks like we're continuing to move things forward. Look, I guess the fact is we are capturing everyone's thoughts, and this is just to remind people, this is the start of, I guess, our co-production. It's not the end of it. So, we want to pursue all this further, and if you feel like we're rushing through a little bit, it's really to sort of touch upon the key themes and key areas we need to address in the paper. So please don't think that we're sort of noted what you had to say and then we'll just ignore it. This is, like I said, we're going to capture this and really use the information that people are sharing with us. Ollie, can we go to the next slide? So the next bit, and if you look back at the New Era paper, it's really divided into 3 sections. So we start with the enablers, we move through to the action section, and the bit that we all think needs to be ramped up considerably is around the case studies. So what we're really after is finding the examples that you have that illustrate how you can be an effective change agent in an era of this disruption. What we have to remember is that when it comes to clinical practice, some clinicians want the level 1 evidence. They want the randomised controlled trial to demonstrate real benefit. And we know that's not how that works here. And we actually have to use other sources of evidence and go to the standard academic literature, plus go to grade papers, look for blogs, look for other information. And we think that in terms of creating evidence, we have to in fact create that evidence ourselves, or pull that evidence together by actually drawing very heavily upon case studies. And let me just go to the next slide, Ollie. So I guess there's sort of 3 types of case studies. There's those that really cross the boundaries of countries. There's a number of case studies that we all know about that are international flavour and in fact national in flavour. And we certainly want to capture those to an extent, but to be really honest with you, what we'd like to do is actually find those really good examples of things that are happening locally that demonstrate that change agents are really making a difference in the work that they do around providing health and care. And we also want to be honest, we want actually those case examples that show that things work well and where things haven't worked well, and what are the sort of, what's the processes people went through to sort of problem solve. So this is where we're really, really dependent on all you guys out there. Is we've got a list of case studies that we draw upon. We want new different and exciting case studies. The ones that we have are really important. There's the NPJ paralysis and Hello My Name Is. They're all really important work, but I think most change agents at locals are a little bit intimidated by the size and scope of those ones. So in this paper, we really want to focus on those things that are happening locally, and we need all you guys to help us in that work. So this is where we have our third breakout session. We want to have some discussion about the examples that you have, that you're aware of, that we can actually start to pull together, and do that in a sort of a nice structured way. So, and for that to be really good learning for material for our future change agents. We're going to break up into rooms, and again, I'm relying on Lee and Rosie making that reality.
Okay, if you're...
Thanks, Rosie.
Hello, everyone. So you should be able to unmute yourself if you're still in this room. So we have the challenge of trying to gather some case studies. And I suppose the question is, are there some obvious gaps, and are there some that you know about yourself that you could bring in the discussion, or, you know, that we could link Peter up with? There's one I'd like to do, I would like to give, and that is from the police. And it's a group up in Blackpool that have started a community interest, or had started a community interest company. And it was about, they recognised that majority of their work is to deal with reoffenders. And so they looked completely the other way around and said, okay, what can we do to stop people from reoffending? So they felt the most important things, there were three things, and that was about having a home, having a community that you're all part of with friends, and having a job. And so they started a building firm where they actually did estate management for the local community on the rented accommodation. And their rate of reduction of reoffending was amazing. So it's like 93% of their clients didn't reoffend. So, and that's kind of like, I think I like that, because it's like thinking of the problem completely the other way around. So I don't know if anybody else has got any other examples that would be good to pull in.
Hi, it's Jill.
Hello, Jill.
I'm not going to take up much space because I think this is a very well-known example, but I think it came up probably after the last white paper was published, and that's the NPJ paralysis, which is a really good example of using social media to great effect.
Yes, absolutely. And I know Brian would definitely be very happy to see that build into the work. And what about anybody know of really good examples of local small-scale change in their own communities? Does anybody know of those things? I'm sure there's probably plenty of examples in your own organisations. We another example. There's a really good example from Nottingham about the porters that applied for the Just Do It fund, because they were worried that their patients were cold when they arrived in theatre, because the hospital was like an old sprawling building. And but actually what they didn't realise was the fact that so they got a blanket warmer basically, so when people arrived in theatre they could wrap them up in a nice cosy blanket and make them feel more reassured. But what the porters didn't realise was that having an optimum temperature to go into theatre reduce your time in recovery afterwards. So they actually increased theatre input throughput from just doing the simple thing of saying our patients are cold when they arrived in theatres. I just love that, because it's really like, it's grassroots. The problem was their patients were cold. So what little stories do you know from your own organisations or from your own communities? It doesn't have to be in health, it could be outside of health. One of the other case studies I think would be good to have is one from the Maker movement, and the Night Scouts, where the dad wanted to change. He wanted to be able to monitor his son's blood glucose when he was at school. Is that right, Ollie? Is it called Night Scouts?
Yeah, it's Night Scout. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. Of he wanted, his son was going to school, his son had diabetes, they wanted a way of being able to know that his son was safe while he's at school, realised they could do glucose monitoring, how could they do it remotely? So they went to several device companies and said, you know, could you sell remote glucose monitoring? And you know, they all hard and told them it was going to cost several £1 million to develop. So he built his own, and then sort of put how he built it on the internet, so other people could start building their own. And it's a really interesting example of actually sort of, you know, doing something by yourself, and how you can disrupt sort of, you know, entire industry essentially.
I think that's such a great example. I'm a bit of a fan of the BBC Two programme that's on at the moment. So in the UK, there's a programme on BBC Two where they they have got challenges about things that people are really struggling to solve. You know, so last night I think it was about a little girl that wanted to be a ballet dancer and had the below knee amputation. I just think I love those sorts of things about how people are thinking differently about solving problems. Yeah. That's good to have some case studies from Twitter and social and that side of things. I think that's a really good point. Jill.
Thank you.
It is, isn't it? And it's kind of like, you know, how we all become a network in itself, isn't through our social media networks.
Okay, I think other people are going to come and join us 60 seconds in a minute or so.
Seconds. I heard the countdown there. I was just thinking about this. I think it'd be nice to get things from inside and outside of an organisation, and then, you know, from community groups as well as patients. There's so much opportunity to get a diversity of ideas. I think people are beginning to join again, aren't they? If you have any more ideas, please put them in the chat room as well. Thank you, Lizzie. If you want to put an example, some ideas, that would be really good to put them in the chat room, and we'll pull them off afterwards. If you know about work that's going on in your own organisation or own community, please add them in. Oh, hi, Peter. We're back in the main room.
Yes, hello there. I think everyone's back now. Yep. Right. Feedback. Does anyone want to give a summary of the conversations they had in their breakout room?
Want me to start, Peter?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, it's Amanda here.
Yeah, perfect.
We spoke about tapping into what's already out there. Like at NICE, we have shared learning, not just for medicines and technologies, but for practice as well. Using Twitter, Facebook, all social media to try and get words out about what's going on, what things are working. I mentioned the 70th NHS birthday television where they put celebrities in hospitals, and that was good promotion for hospitals to show what's going on, so we could build on things like that. Because we mentioned about like Pimp My Zimmer Frame, My Name Is, and those were really, really good campaigns. and they were widely known about, and I was saying tap into how they managed to do that. So that would be a starting point of using their techniques.
Thanks, Amanda. Other comments, other feedback?
We went slightly different in the main room. Sorry, shall I do mine first? So we were slightly different in our main room discussion. We were talked about different approaches and looking at so like a bottom-up example of bottom-up change, whether it's porters that are using simple things, and actually a simple task then led to a much bigger improvement than anticipated. And then we also talked about having diversity in the case study, so kind of thinking of inside and outside of health. So whether it's examples from the police and examples from things such as the Night Scouts, so from the Maker movement again. And we'd also echoed the other stuff about Twitter and those sorts of examples.
Okay, that's good. Any other feedback?
In our group, Peter, Jane was echoing what Amanda was saying with a slightly different tack, but saying about how change programs across the country are run in so many different places. There's no consistency about capturing the case studies, so people can learn. There used to be some kind of resource where people can see, this is what we did, this is what we learned from, this is what didn't go quite so well, this is what we do next time. And Isabel was sharing a case study about, she set up a peer support group, which looks like it's going really well. Isabel and Jane, would you like to add more to that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Isabel.
Yeah. So I did a bit of a research like a couple of years ago, because in our world of radiotherapy, we have quite a lot of colleagues working or specialize in quality. However, we don't have a very good support network. So like people usually just know, the quality colleagues who are working in their region. So like we're talking about a handful of departments. So whenever there's any emerging like challenging issue, they were not really able to have a proper discussion. And also there's not that many free resources that is available. So what happened was we found a free online resources support by the, it's called Dismail. So we set up a secure online platform there, and that allows our colleagues to kind of exchange idea and share the challenging issues they face on a day-to-day basis, and they can post their questions online, and that will go to all the subscribed members. In this way, very often, you post a question, and then you, whoever colleagues, is sitting in front of the desk, they can reply to you and send you, and share their experience rather instantly. So for me, this part actually, has really improved the way we work. However, one of the downside is because we are all trained to do our clinical work. So the quality side, especially the quality improvement science, is a very new subject for us. So this is something we need to kind of work on and see how we can improve our knowledge so that we can, help each other out or enable our, colleagues to do great things. Hello.
Peter, it's Zoe here. You're just on mute, but I can see your mouth moving.
Sorry about that. I coughed and I put the mute on, but thank you, Zoe.
My pleasure.
Is there anything else anyone wants to say before we move on? Right, we might go
quick.
Yes, far away.
Oh no, just quickly to add, we were also talking about how you could use local examples that could be potentially scaled up. So examples of where something started very small and how that has been scaled up. So I think somebody mentioned that already on the call. And also we were talking about when you are delivering case studies, like how robust are we going to be in terms of like evidence and stats to complement the narrative. So thinking about that as well.
Okay, now that's a really useful thought, so thank you. Ollie, let's move on to the next slide. So I guess where to from here? As I've alluded to, this is not the end of the work, it's only really the beginning of the work, and we've sort of got a little bit of information from you, and I guess we want to try and continue to grow that, and I said actively involve people who like to be involved moving on from here to sort of get down to a lot more detail. So I guess what we want to know is, who would like to be involved more in helping? We've actually penned the phrase New Era 2.0 as the rewrite. So who would be interested in being involved moving forward? Does anyone have any thoughts about how we can do better in terms of achieving broader involvement in co-design than we currently are? And thirdly, I guess, what would success look like from your point of view? What if we got a paper or whatever? What would tell you that we've been successful in the way we've produced it and the end product? So we won't break up into separate rooms for this, but I'd invite chat in the chat room, or if anyone wants to speak, it'd be great to have some conversation around that. So I open it up for any feedback or comments. Thoughts? Remembering that, this is, we're putting you on the spot a little bit. So if you have some thoughts in 10 minutes time when this session's ended, we'd very happily invite some reflections on anything that we've talked about today. Most people have moments of inspiration at different times. Mine happened in the middle of run. So if you have yours in an hour's time, we'd love to hear what those are. So, Lee, the chat room, is there anything that's coming through from your point of view?
Hi, Peter. Thank you, everybody. People are really happy to be involved, so that is fantastic. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your offers to help in the future as well. A couple of ideas are to do a tweet chat, which is a fab idea, so thank you. And tweet chats are a fantastic way of people bouncing ideas off one another, so that's super. Yeah, a Friday afternoon, we all get a bit brain dead, so that's not a problem. Yeah, do come back to us whenever you like, and do pop your ideas on Twitter. So you can tweet us at it's SCH4 change, so SCH #4 change. Someone saying here, they were told about the School for Change through word of mouth. Bit of careful advertising to open the door a bit. Feels like a secret club. They're a very cool one. Absolutely. Bonus points there. It's a very cool club, but absolutely it's not exclusive. So please do spread the word. Yeah, we need to ensure that all change programs acknowledge the approaches we are recommending and engage with Horizons on accessing School for Change program for their programs. Absolutely, Jane. We're keen to spread this methodology as far and wide as we can to make change happen again as far and wide as we can. So thank you everybody who is joining us from all over the world. So Amira, so yeah, you can email us. You can email the generic email account for Horizons. We'll pop that in the box, and we will also do a little blog post as well to share to people what some of the outputs were from the meeting, and also share with people what's going to happen next. So yeah, thank you ever so much for people joining us. I'll stop waffling now and pass it back to Peter.
All right, so yeah, like I said, we'll I'm really interested in that last question for people to reflect upon. So if you leave here, if you could at least reflect on that, that would be really, really helpful. So I think we've come to the end of our time. So what if we just go to the final slide, Ollie? I guess It's been a bit chaotic the last hour and a half. There's been, you know, we've covered a lot of territory. We've covered lots of different topics of discussion. So here's your opportunity to give us a little bit of feedback in terms of where you land at the moment, and your thoughts on how the session went. So over to you guys. And once we've done that, I think we're pretty much done. And like I said, I just really want to thank everyone for their involvement today. Now, it's not easy to find an hour and a half, particularly on a Friday, but we've really valued the input that you've all provided. It's been immensely helpful in helping our thinking, and hopefully some of you will be we can actively involve moving forward as this bit of work progresses. And someone's a very good artist. So that's probably a good point to finish things on. So
yeah, hi, Peter. It's Helen.
Oh, Helen. Now that's I was stalling a bit. I was hoping you could join us. So we have a very, very special guest who actually joined us at the very end, just to share her insights on the Neuro paper. So I think everyone here will know Helen, but Helen is obviously the architect of the first paper, and she is actually on holiday. So I feel a little bit guilty that she's with us now, but I think Helen was really keen to sort of join in the tail end of the conversation. So I'm going to throw to you to have a word, Helen.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and thank you everybody for taking part. And you know, like when I look back at all the things that I've done in my improvement career, and I think back to that, you know, the first paper in 2014, I think it's probably one of the most important things, you know, that I was ever part of. And you know, even like 4 years ago, we didn't kind of have the analytics that we've got now in terms of you know, how many people downloaded that paper or worked with it, but it made such a difference. And I'm so delighted that you know, we're doing this work again now, and I'm you know, I've just seen the first version or the, you know, draft number 1 of the New Era paper, and I'm really thrilled that it's happening, and you know, really appreciate that all of you you know, can take part in this, and we really want to make it as good as it possibly can be. So you know, fantastic that you're all engaging, and you know, please keep engaging as we take the paper, you know, from this draft to getting something, you know, a finished article that we can publish and that we can all be really proud of, and we can all you know, take energy and guidance from. So I'm sorry I couldn't be with you for the whole call today, but you know, let's go from strength to strength with this. And thank you, Peter, you know, for all your fantastic work so far, and you know, just what great foundation for an even better version of the New Era paper.
Well, I can't think of a better note to finish on. So thank you, Helen. Thank you, everyone, for your input. I look forward, as this work starts to get pulled together, to working with many of you in terms of coming up with something that we're all going to be hugely proud of. So enjoy your weekends, and thanks again. Bye.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Peter. Bye.
So who's left?
I'm still here. Peter.
I'm here.
Well done.
Hi, hi. And Kate, you're there too.
I am.
You can hang around too if you like.
I might be invited to a breakout room. Do you want me to go to the breakout room?
Oh, is that where we're going? Looks like it. Join break on.
Sorry, yeah, please come to the breakout room.
Okay.